worst outcome in the world is not having self-esteem. Why?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Well, I, I I look at the people, and I don't want to offend anybody, but I look at the people who don't like themselves, and that's the toughest slot because they're always wrestling with themselves, and it's hard enough to face the outside world, and no one's going to like you more than you like yourself. So if you're struggling with yourself, then the outside world becomes an insurmountable challenge. And it's hard to say why people have low self-esteem. It might be genetic. It might just be circumstantial. A lot of times I think it's because they just weren't unconditionally loved as a child. And that sort of seeps in at a deep core level. But self-esteem issues can be the most limiting. One interesting thought is that, to some extent, self-esteem is a reputation you have with yourself. You're watching yourself at all times. You know what you're doing, and you have your own moral code. Everyone has a different moral code. But if you don't live up to your own moral code, the same code that you hold others to, it will damage your self-esteem. So perhaps one way to build up your self-esteem is to live up to your own code very rigorously, have one, and then live up to it. Another way to raise your self-esteem might be to do things for others. If I look back on my life and, what are the moments that I'm actually proud of? There's very far and few between. And it's not that often. And it's not the things you would expect. It's not the material success. It's not having learned this thing or that. It's when I made a sacrifice for somebody or something that I loved. And that's when I'm actually, ironically, most proud. Now, that's through an explicit mental exercise, but I'll bet you at some level I'm recording that implicitly. So that tells me that even if I am not being loved, then the way to create love is to give love, to express love through sacrifice and through duty. And so I think doing things like that can build up your self-esteem really fast.
It's interesting when you talk about sacrifice, because a lot of the time people say, well, I sacrificed so much for my job. It's like, yeah, but that was you sacrificing something that you wanted less for something that you wanted more, as opposed to genuinely taking some sort of cost. And I wonder whether if self-esteem is you adhering to your internal, your actions and your values aligning, even when it's difficult, or perhaps even more so when it's difficult. I wonder whether there is a price that people who are more introspective, high integrity, pay, because you think, well, you've got this heavier set of overheads that you need to pay in some way.
Well, if being ethical were profitable, everybody would do it, right? So at some level, it does involve a sacrifice. But that sacrifice can also be thought of as you're thinking for the long term rather than the short term. For example, the virtues are the set of virtues is a set of beliefs that if everybody in society followed them as individuals, it would lead to win-win outcomes for everybody. So if I am honest and you are honest, then we can do business more easily. We can interact more easily because we can trust each other. So even though there might be a few liars in the system, as long as there aren't too many liars and too many cheaters, a high trust society where everybody's honest is better off. And I think a lot of the virtues work this way, right? If I don't go around sleeping with your wife and you don't sleep with mine, and if I don't take all the food that's at the table first and so on, then we all get along better and we can play win-win games. In game theory, the most famous game is Prisoner's Dilemma, but that's all about everybody cheating and the Nash equilibrium. The stable equilibrium there is everybody cheats, and the only way you can play a win-win game is if you have long-term iterated moves. But that's not actually the most common game played in society. The most common game played is one called a stag's hunt, where if we cooperate, we can bring down a big stag and both have big dinners. But if we don't cooperate, then we have to go hunt like rabbits and we each have small dinners. So most of, and that game has two stable equilibriums. And one could be where we're both hunting the rabbit, and one could be where we're hunting the stag. So the high trust society is a more virtuous society where I can trust you to come hunt the stag with me and show up on time and do the work and divide it up properly. So you want to live in a system where everybody has their own set of virtues and follows them, and then we all win. But I would argue you don't need to do that for sacrifice. You don't need to do that for other people. You can do it just purely for yourself. You will have higher self-esteem. You will attract other high virtue people.
Would I go on a stag hunt with me?
Correct. Yeah, that's right. And if you're the kind of person who long-term signals ethics and virtues, then you'll attract other people who are ethical and virtuous. Whereas if you are a shark, you will eventually find yourself swimming entirely amongst sharks, and that's an unpleasant existence. But again, this goes back to the equivalent of the marshmallow test. And by the way, the marshmallow test does not replicate.
I saw it got replication crisis hard recently.
But it is about trading off the short term for the long term. And so I think for a lot of these so-called virtues, there are long-term selfish reasons to be virtuous.
Yeah. Did you deal with self-doubt in the past? Is that something that was a hurdle for you to overcome?
Yes and no. I think I dealt with self-doubt in the sense that, oh, I don't know what I'm doing and I need to figure it out. Um, but I didn't doubt myself in the way of somebody else knows better than me for me, or that, I'm an idiot or I'm not worthwhile or anything that I guess I had the benefit of I grew up with a lot of love. Like the people around me loved me unconditionally. And so that just gave me a lot of confidence. Not the kind of confidence that would say I have the answer, but the kind of confidence that I will figure it out and I know what I want, or only I am a good arbiter of what I want.
Yeah, that level of self-belief, I suppose, allows you to determine what is it that matters to me. My self-esteem, should I chase this thing or not? I can make a fair judgment on that as opposed to being so swayed. But it's such a good point about even if you think you're not consciously logging the stuff that you're doing, there is some that's in the back of your mind. Was it the daemon? Is that what the ancient Greeks or something used to talk about?
Also in computer science, like there's a concept of a daemon, which is a program that's always running in the background. You can't see it.
Okay.
But yeah, it probably comes from the ancient Greek daemon. But yeah, what you know that you don't even know is far greater than what you know, right? You can't even articulate most of the things you know. There are feelings you have that have no words for them. There are thoughts you have that are felt within the body or subconsciously that you never articulate to yourself. You can't articulate the rules of grammar, yet you exercise them effortlessly when you speak. So I would argue that your implicit knowledge and your knowledge that is unknown to yourself is far greater than the knowledge you can articulate and that you can communicate. And so at some level, you're always watching yourself. That's what your consciousness is, right? It's the thing that's watching everything, including your mind, including your body. So if you want to have high self-esteem, then earn your own self-respect.
I had this idea, the internal golden rule. So the golden rule says treat others the way that you should be treated, you want to be treated. The internal golden rule says treat yourself like others should have treated you. And it was a riposte to maybe people that didn't grow up with unconditional love in that way.
On the love thing, one of the interesting things about love is you can try to remember the feeling of being loved. So go back to when someone was in love with you or someone did love you, and like really remember that feeling, like really sit with it and try to recreate it within yourself. And then go to the feeling of you loving someone and when you were in love. And I'm not even talking about romantic love necessarily, so be a little careful there. I'm talking more about like love for...
It can sometimes get complex if you're talking about past romantic love.
Right, a sibling or a child or something like that, or a parent. And think about when you felt love towards someone or something. And now, which is better? And I would argue that the feeling of being in love is actually more exhilarating than the feeling of being loved. Being loved is a little cloying. It's a little too sweet. You kind of want to push the person away. It's a little embarrassing. And you know that if that person is too much into it, that you feel constrained. On the other hand, the feeling of being in love is very expansive. It's very open. It actually makes you a better version of yourself. It makes you want to be a better person. And so you can create love anytime you want. It's just that craving to receive it. That's the problem.
The most expensive trait is pride. How come?
Oh, that was a recent one. I tweeted that just because I think that pride is the enemy of learning. So when I look at my friends and colleagues, the ones who are still stuck in the past and have grown the least are the ones who were the proudest, because they sort of feel like they already had the answers, and so they don't want to correct themselves publicly. And so this goes back to the fame conversation. You get locked into something you said, it made you famous, you're known for that, and now you want to pivot or change. So pride prevents you from saying, I'm wrong.
What's pride in this context here?
It could be as simple as you're trading stocks and then you don't admit you were wrong, so you hang on to a lousy trade. It could be that you made a decision to marry someone or move somewhere or enter a profession. It doesn't work out, and then you don't admit that you were wrong, so you get stuck in it. It's mostly about getting trapped in local maxima as opposed to going back down and climbing up the mountain again.
And that's why it's an expensive trade, because you continue to need to repay it in one form or another.
Yeah, you're just stuck at a suboptimal point. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you success.
And time.
and time. The great artists always have this ability to start over, whether it's Paul Simon or Madonna or U2, and I'm dating myself a little bit. But even the great entrepreneurs, they're just always willing to start over. I'm always struck by the Elon Musk story where, he did PayPal as X.com originally. Actually, it was his financial institution that got merged into PayPal.
Well, it's good that you've got the domain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I'll park that. I'll hold on to
He's
it.
consistent. He's been using it for quite a while. And he said something like along the lines of, I made $200 million from the sale of PayPal. I put $100 million into SpaceX, $80 million into Tesla, 20 into Solar City, and I had to borrow money for rent. Right? This guy is a perennial risk taker. He's always willing to start over. He doesn't have any pride about being seen as successful or being seen as a failure. He's willing to put it all on the line.
Back himself again each time.
But the key thing is he's always willing to start over. Right. Even now, when he's sort of made his new startup is a USA, right? He's basically trying to fix it like he would fix one of his startups. And I think that is a willingness to look like a fool, and that is a willingness to start over. And a lot of people just don't have that. They become successful, or they become rich, or they become famous, and that's it. They're stuck. They don't want to go back to zero. And creating anything great requires 0 to 1. And that means you go back to zero. And that's really painful and hard to do.
Talking about risk, something I've been thinking about a lot to do with you. Any moment when you're not having a good time, when you're not really happy, you're not doing anyone any favors. I think lots of people have become unusually familiar with suffering silently in that sort of a way, not having a high bar for your expectation for quality of life.
Yeah, a lot of it is just you're memeing yourself into a bad outcome because you think that somehow suffering is glorious, or that it makes you a better person. Or, my old quip was, if you're so smart, why aren't you happy? Why can't you figure that one out? The reality is you can be smart and happy. There are plenty of people in human history who are smart and happy. And I think it just starts with saying, yeah, you know what? I'm going to be happy. There was a guy that I met in Thailand a long time ago, and he used to work for Tony Robbins. He had a great attitude. And we were sitting around, and he said, I realized one day that someone out there had to be the happiest person in the world. Like that person just has to exist. He said, why not me? I'll take on that burden. I'll be that guy. And I heard that and I was like, wow, that's pretty good. That's a good frame, right? Mm-hmm. He knew how to reframe things. And so I think a lot of happiness is just a choice in the sense that you just identify yourself as, actually, I'm going to be a person that's going to be happy. I'm going to figure it out. And you just figure it out along the way. You're not going to lose your other predilections. You're not going to lose your ambition or your desire for success. I think a lot of people have this fear that, if I'm happy, then I won't want to be successful. No, you'll just want to do things that are more aligned with the happy version of you, and you'll be successful at those things. And believe me, the happy version of you is not going to look back at the unhappy version and say, oh man, that guy was going to be more successful.
I wish that I was him.
You're actually trying to be successful so you'll be happy. That's the whole point. You've gotten it backwards.
You unlocked one of my trap cards. One of my favorite insights is that we sacrifice the thing we want for the thing that's supposed to get it. So we sacrifice happiness in order to be successful, so that when we're finally sufficiently successful, we can actually be happy. And if you have some sort of simultaneous equation, and you just sort of stripped success off from both sides.
At least in my own life, I have not found there to be a trade-off.